everything that you want to do.
Okay, Jim, I'm not hearing you real good yet. I'm on another screen. I'll come back to you here in just a second. Okay, Jim, we're live now, so I'll wait for you to get that adjusted.
Oh, I know, trick body, just for you to know, for future reference, for your own knowledge. If you ever view the front of your car, always get your bearings replaced too. Don't just do your shots. Because
we're getting your good side right now, so.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what's going on. Take your
You'll get it there in a second. Yeah, you'll have it there in a second. Let's see.
Let me do this way. Let's see if this works. This will work better. There we go. I'm going to go and be creative here. See if this works. Go this way. All right, recording me in progress.
Yeah,
I got it. Oh, I know what I have. So I have another table here. I'm trying to make an office at home.
Oh yeah, sure.
And just realized something. I have another table. We'll take a little bit. Just look at the lock in the back.
Yeah,
It's got a little lever, you know.
Right. Yeah. As soon as you get that down, we're going to jump into the politics question here in just a minute. As soon as you get that settled in there a little bit,
right,
and jump into that. Now, for those who are joining us in the live stream already, Jim is working on the microphone. Had an issue there real fast right as we're about to
trying to get
go
a good
live.
video.
Yeah, that's okay. We're getting it. The joy of technology lets you go back and edit things out later.
There we go. All right, see if this will go here. Boom. And I'll have to look kind of funny. Let's see real quick. All right. How we doing? Oops.
Yeah, got to get you all in the picture though. Your chin's dropping off the bottom, so.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, that's a little better. It could actually go down just a little bit more if you want it to. Will it let you go down too much with it?
It's just not a strong stand. It's like,
yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm not fancy like
you. Well, like I said, in the old days, you just take a phone book and sit on it, but not so much anymore. Your phone is now in your phone and doesn't give you much elevation at that point. Well, let's jump into our conversation. Lifeway Research published an article just a couple of days ago about politics and the election. And so the first question I kind of wanted to pose was about politics in the church, as in secular politics and how they impact the church. But this article was real interesting. I'll link it in the comments here, but the title of the article is "Churchgoers Increasingly Prefer a Congregation That Shares Their Politics." And let me just mention a couple of quotes from it real fast, and then let's discuss it. It says, half of the U.S. Protestant churchgoers say they prefer to attend a church where people share their views on politics, and most believe that to be the case in the congregation they already attend. And they showed a graph, which I thought was pretty interesting, showing that most churchgoers attend with people who share their political views as well, and they kind of prefer that. The prefer attending that church, 50% of the people agree. And those that want their political views to match those people in the church was 55%. So well over 0.5%. The kind of the old school about politics in the church for a pastor was, you know, you don't want to preach politics. You don't endorse candidates. You don't talk about a particular political persuasion, primarily because you want to be pastor to all the people, whoever's there. And I've pastored in areas where a good number of the people in my church were very strong, blue dog, Democrats, and others that were Republican, and then some that were independent as well. And so in my head as a young pastor, I thought, well, that makes sense. I always preached on topics. I'd preach on issues, like I always preach about, pro-life, the importance of life, but I wouldn't preach against a particular candidate by name necessarily, who stood against that, was pro-abortion or something of that sort. But you and I were talking a minute ago before we kind of went on about how that really kind of has changed. Do you think churches need to, I've always thought the people in the church need to be engaged in politics, because we need to be salt and light in every area of our community. But what do you think now about the engagement of people in the church and churches as such, maintaining a political view as far as the secular political view?
Well, we're called to be salt and light, and that means we're to be engaged in all aspects of life with the citizens we live with, the people we live with. We want the best for them. We want virtue to be raised above vice. We believe that there's absolute truth. Going back to your question about being Democrat or Republican, go back in time. Where would people place a John F. Kennedy today on the political spectrum? Would they be considered to be acceptable in the Democrat Party, or would you be considered to be a radical conservative?
Yeah, a lot of things have changed in the parties. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also the culture. And I think going back to it too, at one point, like I was telling you, I think being a Democrat Republican was more of a nuance concerning how people got paid and who benefit the most from the government. Would it be the corporations getting more tax breaks or less tax breaks to support social care, and not even socialism, but social care for those who are indigent, those who have homeless needs, mental illness needs, health needs that they couldn't afford it, helping kids go to school.
We had labor unions and all that stuff too. Yeah.
But how is that helping them advance their family, helping them advance the core values that husband and wife matter, and we need to, and the government had a vested interest in protecting the family and helping the family flourish, which is the Bible's command, go out and multiply. It was one of the first commandments God gave human beings. Well, now you entered a season where there isn't as much parity, because people in America no longer share a common framework of valuing the Western worldview that developed out of Christianity. Now it's a postmodern rejection of truth, postmodern rejection of not only truth, but taking offense at Christianity, taking offense at people who are Caucasian or male, and highlighting vice, highlighting misery, highlighting anger, rather than looking to a goal to achieve. They look to create an enemy to exploit people's natural tendency to hate, argue, and be vicious. And again, anger, when it's rightly placed against injustice, is fine. But when there isn't enough problems in America, we're the top 5% of the world, or top 1%. We have healthcare, we have cars, we have homes. We are very, very wealthy. And where does all the anger get pointed to in our politics? To the 0.1%. Again, they're wealthy beyond my imagination. But if we were to compare ourselves to where people lived 100 years ago on average, where people lived 1,000 years ago, no running water, no toilet, no healthcare, and let alone even today, where the majority of the world lives in absolute poverty, but we're seeing it raised because of the Western culture. It's not because of communism. It's not because of dictators. It's not because of the Middle East that people overall are seeing poverty being taken out of Africa and Asia. And
we have a capitalist framework in which we've worked. But coming back to the church question, though, all of that stuff is in the culture, and generations past, for the most part, They wanted to impact the culture, but they
Right.
didn't want necessarily to have that culture come within the
Right.
church. And, the pastors stand up,
Right.
maybe for the social issues, kind of like I grew up doing,
Right.
young in ministry, but not necessarily political party one or the other, so as not to, offend, part of the congregation they were called a pastor. Because that's the higher calling, obviously, is to be able to pastor those people.
Yeah, and I disagree with that.
Okay, unpack
Because
that.
I think Vance Havner said it well. The church, the mission of the church is to comfort the afflicted. In other words, offer comfort to those people who recognize I've been injured unjustly, or I have lived unjustly, and now I'm afflicted. I'm willing to confess and repent. I'm the prodigal son, and take them in and help them grow in discipleship and love and build community, and to afflict the comfortable. So church is not about making people happy, but that's what happened with this whole seeker-sensitive and seeker-driven movement. Seeker-driven movement is part of our culture. It's making a commodity out of church, making people feel happy, just giving positive messages of self-help and well-being, without the harder messages where Christ kicked people out of the tax collectors. Get out of here! You're making my Father's house a den of thieves. Holding people accountable to good business ethics, holding people accountable to raising their kids and being good husbands and wives, holding people accountable to watch what their kids are learning in school, and teaching their kids biblical worldview, not going, well, it's postmodern world. Let's all get along, and you do you, and you whatever you feel is real. So it's all become navel gazing. It's all about
no. That there's no question about that. But let me back up just saying what you're saying about like the seeker sensitive. Just like any approach that we have ever seen historically as far as related to the church, seeker sensitive movement has a wide range of how that's impacted.
Right.
The extreme range, for sure, I think has led to a lot of what you're talking about. But on the nearer end, those who are still very conservative biblically, that kind of thing, but they're wanting to use let's say non-King James language.
Correct.
Instead of a benediction, it's a closing prayer. Instead of the invocation, it's an opening prayer. I mean, making the language friendly, trying to be friendly, user friendly would be kind of the term we've adopted in computers. But where what we're doing in the church is a little bit friendlier for those who are seeking, but not that far extreme at that point. Do you think that alone, or are there other factors that have made it reasonable now to advocate for actually taking a political stand within your church? Or are you advocating that?
Yeah, because you can't support outright murder. There was a time
with the abortion issue.
When you go to the attitude of, hey, let's make abortion safe, rare, and legal. It's going to happen, and we don't think that people should be aborted, but we can understand there's nuances for a very small segment of society. Come to find out that that's not why abortion is being used typically, and now and when is life viable? Now we know more and more about the viability of life, when life really is beginning. Human beings don't go through this process.
Science has advanced, sure.
Yes, and we now know it's not really you become a frog, become a chicken, and you become a human. You're a human from the very beginning, and babies can survive within 4 months, 5 months of pregnancy. Then you have the Democrat Party celebrating abortion up to birth and after birth. So the line keeps on moving in the Democrat Party. Now, again, depending on where you come from, what you're dealing with, I can understand at some point Christians voting different parties because they weren't so dogmatic about embracing evil. It's like, we're going to allow for people to make bad choices without punishing them. But now it's outright advocating so many things that are clearly unbiblical. Now the Democrat Party has always been a champion of ending racism. So I can understand when, if I'm a victim of racism or feel like there's racism a problem in my culture, and go, well, the abortion agenda is not being moved ahead by this group, but this party candidate will help move my family's concerns forward. And when I talk to Christians who really are, I believe, have a genuine, experience of being able to give a testimony, that may have voted for candidates who were of that party that the party plank is abortion. They
Right.
explain going, we don't like abortion, but we don't see the other party moving the issue anywhere differently. And we have a real problem in our inner city, our community, our families. We want to have our families supported and restructured. We want to see single moms being rewarded. We want to see them encouraged. We want to see kids trained in school. And this group is not doing it. This group is actually focusing on those things that touch our heart and our family. So we're going to ignore the evil that we don't like for this platform that we are concerned about is happening locally for us. But now it's gone off the rails where it's not just a matter of killing babies, but killing born babies or killing babies that are more than viable just because of the accident of timing of birth. You have the issue of there is no marriage anymore because marriage is anything you want it to be. Now they're going to say it's just two people who love each other. How do you limit that? Based upon what? Tradition? Based upon biology? No, they're just making it up as they go. So why can't it be, 3 guys and a gal, like the Revelation talks about in Matthew? 3 women come to men. We'll take care of you. Give us your name. There's no structure, and we know kids function and their optimal outcome by far exceeds any other group when they have a mom and dad raising them together.
And the evidence is pretty clear on that.
Yes.
So let me go back to the church, because we're doing this on Election Day, November 8th, 2022. So there are lots of issues that are really out there that are being debated.
Yep.
We're talking inflation. We're talking the political issues of supporting Ukraine, et cetera, pulling out of Afghanistan during this administration.
Right.
So there is a lot of division and things that people would feel are a moral infringement upon what we've done as a country and a lot of other things. Not to mention the capitalist versus socialist kind of a mentality.
Right, and that's the problem. Socialism is being sold as the solution to all of our problems. And socialism is not the solution. It was totally debunked by what happened in Russia in communist times, and also in North Korea, South Korea. If you could choose where you're born, you can only choose those 2 countries. I can guarantee you anybody with any sense of any knowledge what's going on would always choose South Korea. Living in China or living in Taiwan, you're going to choose Taiwan. And so the problem is that you have liberals, and it's actually, I like there's a word called transgressives, not transgender people, but they want to, their view of making the future right is to transgress all the things that the Bible says are healthy, holy, honoring God, but also you're made to follow these things. And when you follow these truths, you'll have a better outcome by far than anything else. There is that study they did called I forget what it's called. It's like something about the success ladder. And what they say it was, they said, okay, success ladder. If you want to enter middle class in America, you get an education. Then when you get your education, you get a job and stability. You get married first, and then you have kids. And 95% of the time, you will, even if you're in poverty, if you follow that success pattern, you will end up with a stable, healthy home and healthy emotions and more healthy life. Typically, your kids will be healthy, well-adjusted. 95%. You miss one of those things, the odds of staying poor and being in constant difficulty of stress financially, emotionally, relationship-wise, dramatically decreases, which then affects kids. That success pattern is what the Bible ultimately teaches human beings to do as the main core of our life. So the transgressives want to say marriage doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, family doesn't matter, the state will take care of you. Ocasio-Cortez, remember her? She said, "Oh, here is so-and-so, and she's single and she's our own, and the government will pay her way to get to train from New York City to China." Well, Ocasio-Cortez, remember there's an ocean there, so figure that out. Again, these are people that are being taken seriously, and they'll pay for everything. Well, who's paying the freight for this? We're taking care of all these people. Again, it's the workers, the people who are earning a living. How can I have a hard time taking care of my family? Economy's bad. How can I add on another burden of 2 more families that aren't working and don't have any structure, no stability, and no direction in life? So they keep on making bad choices because they're taught to disbelieve in truth.
Okay, so when you take the idea and you frame it with this transgressive idea, and there's a destination, as you mentioned, there's kind of a destination in mind. As a pastor, when you're standing in your church with a Bible study group or a pulpit or something else, when you're there, do you feel like you're needing to preach and pound away at those social issues and help people to understand what those issues are so they make the right choices? Are you more directive and more deliberate as far as, we need to vote this particular way or whatever? I know there's a very difficult line as far as endorsing a candidate, and churches aren't supposed to do that.
I don't think so.
But how far do you go?
I disagree with you, Bobby. I don't think it's a problem. I mean, there are churches that actually have candidates come into them, and they tend to be churches that support a blue wave.
Right. Yeah.
No,
I've seen that over the years.
There's never been a problem legally or substantively with that happening. So I don't know why we create a problem that doesn't exist. We just create it for ourselves. And again, I don't like endorsing candidates, particularly from the pulpit, because I don't believe that either party fully embraces the Christian worldview I have. I don't believe I trust any politician to stand tall when we need to. I trust God that he will bring forth his purpose in the end, and that we will sometimes get what we deserve in our politicians. And I do believe there are some good men and women who stand firm on their convictions. But let's remember, when Israel returned from exile, maybe 20-25% came home. And of those that did so, how many got right to work and built the temple? That took years. It wasn't for Ezra and Nehemiah pushing the people and calling them out. And then they faced opposition. And how many people got discouraged? The Bible says they got discouraged. And God says in Ezra, the people stopped doing God's work because of politicians and other politics and other peoples scared them and bullied them. In Haggai, he says, because the people, it's a people's fault. They did not stand tall. So whose fault was it? Well, we're always going to face opposition, and we're going to call opposition out. When they called out the enemies of Israel in Ezra, they named names. They said, and the enemy named names too. True. The enemy tried to claim that Ezra and Nehemiah and all those guys they're against you, Emperor. You need to stop them, King Darius. Go get them. And then they had a fight, a court battle, and they won. And then God flipped on the other side and made them pay back. But the principles that are being followed in the Democrat, especially, again, there's dogma in Republicans that I don't like. It's just, I'm all for having people come in and be part of our country if they want to believe what we believe as far as the value of capitalism and of freedom and individual sovereignty. And that is the most important thing. The Bible teaches that everybody's made in God's image from conception until death, natural death. And that should be the number one hierarchy of how we view politics. And when you see groups of people denying that we have fundamental design, that we have a fundamental purpose, and that each person is valuable, it's not the group identity, it's the individual identity. So when you stop allowing free speech, because free speech is how we communicate and discover truth. And when truth is suppressed, or even lies aren't expressed and truth is able to combat it, we are denying what God designed in us for society. He gave us the law that we would sit back and think about it, meditate on it, not because the law doesn't naturally download into our brains. We have to observe it. We are tactile beings. We are experiential beings. We have to experience reality, test boundaries, and learn the boundaries, and that the boundaries are good. The law was not made for God. God's limitless. God doesn't need law. He's not gonna break his own nature. But we, being limited and not being God, we're gonna make stupid decisions. And we need a way to test and see and taste and see that the law is good and the Lord is good. And so we need to point people when we see blatant immorality, not like, hey, we're going to find a way to work with the broken nature of humanity. Rather, we're going to call what's broken fixed, and call people who have truth and knowledge and God on their side evil. The thing about politicians, you go to Loudoun School County. The law now was you don't speak about the obvious problems if you deny gender And boys, masculine beings with larger frames, heavier weight, and a stronger sexual drive and interest are able to walk into safe spaces for girls called girls' bathrooms. And you have a disparity of an 18-year-old male, almost an adult, with a 13-year-old female that might be the size of maybe 80 pounds, a 200-pound male, walk in that bathroom, take advantage of that girl, and you see what happened at school board. Just for speaking the truth, number one, of an actual assault on his daughter. My daughter was assaulted. The school board hid it. And then speaking the absolute truth, saying gender matters, boys are different than girls, and my kids suffered. For speaking that truth at the school board, the force of the state, police officers tackled that father, beat him up, handcuffed him, and took him to jail. And they protected the person who was mentally ill and sinful and criminal in order to keep their agenda going. That is the end result of what socialism, communism, Marxism, which is our atheistic worldviews that use.
Okay, so would you use that kind of an illustration, like when you're preaching,
I use it Sunday,
the Bible study in your congregation to help them see that?
Yeah. What is that one quote? Was it Luther? He who preaches the word of God in all manners, except for in ways that touch people's day-to-day lives, he does not preach the gospel at all.
Yeah, that's good.
And if all this is about going to heaven, which again, that's the problem I have with evangelicalism. I don't see sacred space anymore. I don't see a sense of holiness. It's about, am I happy? I see happiness being greater than holiness. And again, if the Democrat Party, Libertarian, or Republicans are wrong in something, we need to call them all out. But when they're way wrong, when they're actually celebrating the abortion up to the moment of birth and after in New York City state with Governor Cuomo, who ended up not being the paragon of virtue that everybody, it's amazing. It's okay to kill babies, and they cheer him on, and they turn the state house pink but looks red on TV, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Bull luck. Turns red. Everybody's cheering it on the left. The mass media is cheering it, and he's clapping on. All of a sudden, it's found that he's hitting on women. He's kind of like a really rude. Again, I don't know how far he went, but all of a sudden, that's the worst thing in the world. He's out of. It is. It's bad what he did. But how do you get? How do you function when marriage doesn't matter? How does he know what the limit is? If marriage and sex don't matter, why was he wrong on that section according to their worldview, and right on abortion? To me, they're both wrong. I don't have to question that.
Well, and we are in a postmodern type of even post-Christian, some would say,
yes,
era where the sense of authority, if you stand up and say, look, the Bible is the ultimate authority, and what's here is to be believed, and we can build our life upon that. There are people that go, no. In fact, I've seen some studies recently that even among church people that oftentimes would not say that the Bible is authoritative at that point. And back to what you said a minute ago, I mean, so much of what we're seeing is based upon feelings. How do you feel?
Right.
And that's incredible things happening at universities, where they're getting professors fired and all kinds of things happen because somebody comes onto the university campus who's going to talk about something they disagree with from a different perspective. Right. All I can say is when I was in university and college, even in seminary, I mean, a theological school, I can remember one of my ethics professors throwing out some stuff. Man, 3/4 of the class was enraged. They were so furious and like, he ought to be fired and da da da. Well, got to the next classroom and he sat back just with a little smirk on his face. He said, guys, just because I'm defending something in an ethics class doesn't mean that's what I believe. Right. I just want to make sure that you are able to stand on what you believe. Yep. If you oppose whatever it is, you need to be able to have a coherent argument for that. And I've always remembered that, thinking, but that's what higher education should be. It shouldn't be just indoctrination. It should be challenging you to dig deep and to go, okay, why do I believe that? And not just based on feelings. And so many things in society now are so much just based on feelings.
And then the outcome is horrible. And we end up paying for it.
Apparently
I sat down with our state senators. I was in Washington, D.C. 4 years ago and sat with some of our representatives from Indiana and other representatives, as well as senators, and spent a Bible study with Mike Pence's office. But one of the things that struck me as I go pray with senators and and representatives here in Indiana. And we go to their office and pray with them and ask them if we can pray for them and help them out. One guy said, pray for America's families, pray for people to get back on track. He said, 95% of the work I do, 95% of the money we spend are all trying to fix problems that the family was designed to take care of. And break down the family, break down in virtue. And the only place that has it, you're not going to find virtue in science. Science does not tell you how to live. Science doesn't even answer most of the questions we ask every day. How do I feel? What do I need? What's the right decision here? How do I treat my wife? How to treat my husband? How to raise kids? Science does not answer those questions. It can just tell you what is. But how do you go from an is to an ought without having a supernatural, a directive, a metaphysical state of being? And again, most of us live in metaphysical, but the modern worldview denies anything. It's hard materialism. And most people don't live that way, but they've been taught to think that that's what truth is. And it short circuits them from hearing the gospel, hearing the truth. There's going to be no, I can say, and I would just challenge anybody, that the Christian worldview, that each individual that is made in God's image is the foundation of their belief that they are special and they have rights. And without that view, why do you think you're just a zygote, that you're just an amoeba that became a monk, basically a tadpole to a frog, to a monkey that climbed down the tree one day, and it was all by chance and violence that you survived. So why do you think if you're weaker, you have any rights at all? Because it's all about survival of the fittest in species. If you're not the best of the best, why should Mother Nature, if that's all there is and there's no God, why should it allow you to live and have a happy life? Maybe you should just be suffering, which we don't believe that, but people don't think it through. They are Christian through and through in when they cry and whine, but when they want to sin, they all of a sudden want to get rid of the baby Jesus with the bathwater. And they don't realize that they are like the insane person that is chopping at the basement of the insane asylum. And a worker said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because I don't like the basement. It's a problem. And the person said, "You live in this building." But he goes back to, "Yeah, but I'm on the third floor. It didn't affect me." And like, remember, I think it was Simpsons too, where the dad Homer, he drank a gin of vodka and lard or something. And someone said, "Homer, you're going to be really sick later on." He goes, "That's a problem for future Homer. I'm sure glad I'm not him." And that's our world. People make these dumb decisions that, like, it's like watching a train crash. I can't tell you how many times God has shown me this person's living in sin. This person's lying. I've actually, God, the Holy Spirit says this person's lying. You have the detector, and it's blatant. And God says this person's going to suffer this way. And it's like watching a train crash. You can see two trains running into the bad choices in reality, and you see them coming, and you watch it, like going. You can hear the blaring sounds, but they keep on doing it, and then wonder why. Why did I crash? It's the church's fault. It's the pastor's fault. Everybody blames somebody else when the reality is, unless somebody had total control of your life.
Yeah.
And even
Boy, we've devolved into the Simpsons now. We're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. That's future. Yeah, that's future.
But the reality is, one of the things, and I want to shift gears on our topic here in a second, but one of the things that has often bothered me about some of those animated, kind of adult animated things like The Simpsons and some of those kind of cartoons has always been that sense of devaluing people. A natural kind of a disrespect that's shown there among the family. It's like, well, but this is representing kind of a real family now.
Dads are stupid.
It didn't look anything like the family I grew up in, at all, nor the family I wanted to model for my own family, as far as that. And I guess when we talk about politics in the church, there's some things that are really clear. Male, female, really clear.
And if the
party whole idea of abortion, really clear. But there are other issues that really, you can find biblical. I
think immigration is an issue that we should look for. We should be pro-immigration, but we need to be.
What about inflation? What about the crazy spending that's caused inflation? All of those things can be impacted.
But that's a biblical point too. You don't spend money you don't have. You
Right.
don't make promises you can't keep. Now, again, you might make a mistake, but when you see people intentionally lying, intentionally
Right.
promising things to manipulate, you don't manipulate. God hates false scales. Oh, it's all subjective. No, God
Yeah.
hates false scales, and God
Right.
talks about that. Think about in the Bible. Who are the people, even in the group of God's family, and the politics? Oh, it's all about spirituality. Who are the people God killed right away in the family for what they did? There's several times it happened. The guy's offering false incense, not honoring sacred space. But Achan, his whole family got killed because of money. He stole what he wasn't belonging to him. He took things in a way he shouldn't have taken it. In the New Testament, who are the only Christians that God killed that we know of? Ananias and Sapphira.
Ananias and Sapphira. Yeah,
What did
yeah.
God say to them? He said, it was your money before you gave it to us, but because you used your money and pretended you gave more than you did, and you try to manipulate people to give you position and power and make yourself look good, put your little Jesus fish on your car, you're gone. So, I mean, those are the things that the rubber meets the road, and we think it's all about going to heaven. We all get to heaven. What a great place to be. Not everybody's going to heaven. Look back in the early church. Church discipline was very, very common.
Yeah. No, it was.
And then in the early ages of America, when you have Protestants taking over here, you have people talk about the halfway covenant. That you had people who were born into the church by family members, like they came at birth, and so they made them members of the church, but they weren't possessors of salvation, and so that became a problem because these people began to influence the culture of the church because they didn't have any unction of the Holy Spirit to obey the Bible, and they wanted the Christians to take a back seat to culture. And whereas the early church, what did Tertullian say it was? The seed of the martyrs. Why were they martyred? Because they're nice people and they love people, or because they were villains? Were they out there bombing places? No, the Christians were simply saying, we are not going to go along with culture. We're not going to bow down to Caesar. We're slavery. Telemachus, one of the early monks that went to Rome. They said he went to the Colosseum and saw the murderous, barbaric behavior, and he cried out, for the love of Christ, stop, for the love of Christ, stop. No one listened to him. He jumped into the arena and put his hands up and told the gladiator, stop killing each other. You're made in God's image, for the love of Christ. And people laughed because they thought he was joking around at first. One man, and then a gladiator ran him through and killed him. Yeah. And when that happened, they say the Colosseum hushed, and the gladiators stopped fighting. And people began to walk out of that Colosseum one by one. And within a few years, the emperor outlawed those games. That is the power of one man standing up to culture and society. Today, we'd probably be in the crowd paying for more hamburgers and beer. And not all, but many people that go to church or claim.
Right. Well,
many people.
Yeah. And then you expand that into social media and all kinds of other stuff as well. Yeah.
My kid's a great kid, and the kid's up there giving the salute with his, the bad salute with his finger. The girls are showing off things that are very, very provocative, and Jim knows about that stuff. You can't not see it on the news. It's there. You watch kids; they don't value themselves. They're smoking, they're drinking, they're experimenting with drugs. They have so much wealth, they have so much activity, and these Christians, quote unquote, name only, I would say, think they're okay because they repeated a mantra. Because we're so seeker sensitive sometimes that we don't talk holiness. We don't talk about how your politics, your religion, your faith need to be integrated. Paul said, I become all things to all people, that by all possible means I could save some, but without, to this guy became that guy, to the one without the law. But for myself, I still obeyed Christ and his law. So he was relating to them, but he didn't join their beliefs. He didn't act in ways he knew were contrary to the gospel. It's a totally different between saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to vote with this party, in the fact that I'm voting for this one issue, two issues, and I hope that it gets forward, as opposed to whatever the party says, our church needs to do. So that's the other danger too. You have this strong evangelical movement right now that became enamored with the demagoguery of President Trump. And I'm not.
Well, no, they've given it a name, hasn't it? Like Christian nationalism or
and they don't go to church
or something. Yeah,
you couldn't ask when. What is 4% of executive pastors wouldn't pass a Christian quiz of basic. Is Jesus Christ God? Was he born of a virgin? Is the Bible true? Is there absolute truth? Is Christ coming again? They wouldn't even agree with that. Less than 5% would agree with that. 95% of executive pastors wouldn't, and less than half of all other pastors besides senior pastors don't believe those 7 core elements of what we call Christian gospel, Christian tenets. And only 54%, I think, of senior pastors that were surveyed in a very good statistical study by Barna a couple weeks ago would agree with what would be Orthodox Christianity anymore, let alone politics. So and
back to where we started, from that Lifeway research study, that the larger majority of people really want to be able to worship with people they feel have that same kind of an ideology as far as the political ideology, and they would prefer and think that the majority of people in their congregation probably are. And I mentioned earlier about early on pastoring churches that I knew had a split between Republican, Democrat were the heaviest, but then some independents. But I would venture to say probably now, these many years later, that even some of those same churches probably don't have near that kind of a mix now. Well, in part by what you said earlier, like the Democratic Party of JFK is very different than what it is today, at that point as well.
Here's a biblical point, Bobby. Okay. You remember when you had Jeroboam and Rehoboam fight? Then you had Jeroboam, because Rehoboam was not doing right by God's eyes either, but he kept 2 different places to worship in Dan and Beersheba, the bottom and the top, to stop the Jews from going to the 3 festivals that required in all 6 that they wanted to give them a passivity, a rational way to not obey God's Torah law, right? Which is the way you identify with God in the Old Testament and politics. So he set that up. If you look at the population after that happened, you will see that people moved from the other 10 tribes to Judah. And that's why those 2 tribes grew, because people said, I am not going to compromise with culture. I don't want to have a partial Christianity. I don't have a partial Judaism. I want to be fully in line with Yahweh. And they moved. And you see that population trend. So we're seeing that happen right now. There's a population shift between people who are in church. They're getting more committed to my whole worldview needs to be unified. Now, that doesn't mean that they're perfect. Doesn't mean that everything that people believe that's political is what God really wants. But the big, large boulders, you have to put boulders in first. Life, marriage, gender, children, economy. Can I feed my family, take care of them? Those are very clear. And do I want the government guiding my state of being, my morality, my telling me what I can and can't do? Because once you give somebody with power, sure, you might get a good person that's a good-hearted person, but once that person's gone, or if they have people around them, there's power always attracts people that just want to be tyrannical or evil or controlling, and they will either wait for that person to die or kill them. Look at down in Venezuela, Maduro, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. There are places, other places in the world you can see that where that progression has been. It was just a little bit to start with, and now of late, it's like, no, it's like what country was it? I remember seeing a report the other day on, and the report was that 90-something%, like 99 and 98% of the population voted, and this is one of the most democratic votes ever.
That was Ukraine.
Early Russia, I think.
Was it Ukraine? Russia, when Russia took over.
And it's like, well, the majority of people thought this. Well, yeah, you did, or you face possible death or life in work prison.
Again, the same thing in America. How many people tithe in churches that say they're full-out Christians, they love God, they want God to be honored? And tithing doesn't send you to heaven or hell, but it's a principle that God gave, that you return to him the wealth that he's given you that sustain your life, right? But how many people in the same pews would ever tell the government, I'm not paying my taxes? Only give you 5% of it. Why? Because unlike God, who says, I will judge you at the end of days, the government judges you the first year you don't do it, and people freak out. And that always amazes me. It tells you where people are I can tell people right away. Do they come to church regular? Do they seek to join in the vision of that local church? Because no church is going to do everything the same. And you have to say, we have to work together for the cause of Christ. And then do you support that where it matters? Your calendar and your wallet. And if you don't do those 2 things, I can guarantee you, your heart's not right with God.
Yep.
'Cause you
Time,
can-
talent, and treasure is what they used
Yep.
to say. Time,
Yep.
talent, and treasure. Yeah.
And how many Christians tithe? How many
Yeah.
Christians give regularly a reasonable amount?
Yeah.
Very
Other than the
few.
penance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very few. You
Yeah.
know,
Not just soothing their conscience.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's take a shift. I want to give you a quote and get your response. I think this is an interesting quote. Tom Cheney, in an Instagram post yesterday, I believe it was, he posted this quote from a revitalization conference. He leads church revitalization, and he was talking about putting together a church revitalization, what he calls like an assistance team, somebody that's going to be like a help in the transition to revitalize a church. But here's the quote by Tom Cheney, and I want to get your response. He said, "Negativity is the toolbox of those seeking the status quo."
Mhm. Yep.
What do you think?
The devil does not need to win outright. I'm a Clemson grad. Boy, Notre Dame does.
I'm really
not-
sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
I'm
hey,
sorry.
You know what? And I'm proud of Dabo Sweeney saying it's all his fault. He said all falls on me. No, he did. And that's one thing, that's integrity. But the devil didn't need to beat us. He just needs to make us sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's true.
Just that's all he has to do. Because if you got to stop moving the kingdom forward, people naturally will follow the evil. Jesus Christ, when John was talking about it in John 3, this is the judgment. Light has come into the world, and people have loved the darkness more than the light. We're after John 3:16. Because why? Their deeds are evil. And what it comes down to, hey, I like to drink, so I'm not going to talk about your porn. I like to date a lot, so I'm not going to talk about adultery. I like to make a lot of money, and I want my career to go well, so I'm not going to talk about abortion, because what if I need that to continue my career? I mean, that's how it is. I mean, they know it's wrong, but they're not willing to take a stand against it because they're afraid, what if I call it wrong? I'll be called a hypocrite. I'll be called biased. I'll be called all sorts of names. And people say you're a holy roller, when really Christianity doesn't say we are perfect. It says we serve a perfect God we have to answer to. And therefore, we want to approximate as best as we can, given the knowledge we have from God in every moment of our life, as often as we can, the good he has, because a little bit of chaos. Remember, God stood over the waters, and he's tohu vahohu. He was before the chaos, and he created order. And even when he made the world good, he only made Eden the way ordered he wanted to. He said, it's our job to take the chaos and make order, because it'll make us more like God and appreciate what God's doing for us more.
Okay, so as a pastor who you're trying to lead your church, there are many, many, many churches in our country, particularly the United States, that are plateaued at best, declining is a large number of them, especially since COVID. 30+% of churches, we're told, have not ever even gotten back to the levels they were prior to COVID and all the things that happened with that. So Cheney is talking in that quote, he's talking to these church replanting pastors, these revitalization pastors. And this is the other thing he said. He said, look for those who will find opportunity in every obstacle. So as a pastor, how have you seen individuals who just seem to be negative all the time to impact where you're wanting to take the church? You don't want the church to be status quo, but his quote, when I saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, negativity, the toolbox for those seeking status quo. How have you seen that impact your ministry?
You're always facing that. That's not new. It's the reality. You're going to have people who come to church for wrong reasons. They come to church, want to make profit. They want to sell houses. They want to sell insurance. Not that all do that. I mean, it's fine to be insurance salesmen. They want to take advantage.
How do you handle those? I mean, I
but
get it.
the reality is that they're coming for other reasons than for spiritual.
How do you respond to them? How do you try to move them beyond or help people move?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. When somebody says they're Christian, they're inoculated, and they're doing things like that. They're inoculated to Christianity. It's only new people that are open, that the afflicted people say, I got problems, that you can do that with. You have to face that. That's reality. Now, it doesn't mean you give up totally, but where are you gonna put your time in? A negative person? They talk about it in business all the time. Who do you put your time into? The people who want to move forward.
Yeah, that's true.
And you need to preach against sin so that people can identify that's a negative person. They're not criticizing to help. They're criticizing to get attention and power. And you got to recognize who are the real disciples and who isn't. I need to take a break if you don't mind. Can you take me off real quick?
Go ahead and take a break. Yeah. I'm going to give another quote. I think this is a great quote. I saw this on social media this morning. Actually, it came from a text from John Bullock, a friend of mine. But he wrote this, and I thought it really stood out, especially when we're talking about the politics and some of those kind of things that are happening today. And here's what he said. He said, "Private courage with public cowardice makes for poor character. Private courage with public cowardice makes for poor character." John Bullock said that. And so many times you see that happen, not only within the church, but within maybe even association, a state convention, within our denomination. I'm, Southern Baptist, and most, large majority, not all, but a large majority of my friends are in Southern Baptist churches or Southern Baptist work in some sort. And too often you'll see and hear them behind the scenes making some kind of a comment, talking about a relationship like with the North American Mission Board, Executive Committee, and they'll be saying things there, but when it comes time to be public and speak publicly, it's all glowing, it's all sugar coated, it's all honey, and so the public impression is that, wow, things must be really going great. At that point, I just thought it was a great quote. Jim, since you're back with us, let me get kind of a little feedback. The quote again is, "Private courage with public cowardice makes for poor character." Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that, but it's the same question that was asked of by Dan Quayle. Remember the debate, Vice President debate, where he said, if you're publicly against abortion and privately for it, why? Why would you be for it if you think it's a public good? Why would you be against it? And if you're privately against it because you think it's evil, why would you be publicly for it? And that's a political game, and that's an issue of character and integrity.
Yeah.
And that's why going back to the question of getting people on board, there's generally negative people who are negative and critical and outspoken and trying to destroy, and there's always going to be that group of people in any organization, Christian or not. So we need to stop pretending and whitewashing because they're in the church. We're not going to have, they have membership. We know them. Anybody, anytime is one step from stupid. Okay. So you got to get past that little,
and you can't
childish,
fix stupid,
immature view that everybody in my church that I know that I think are good people, I'm going to believe their lips and not believe my eyes, like Groucho Marx said. You see negative people, they act negative, they're just crouchy, they're mad, they're angry, and they've said they've been Christians for years. They're probably not a Christian. Just reality.
Well, and in the denominational life, as I read that quote, what really was a zinger to me is I can think back of so many conversations behind the scenes, just like small groups of denominational leaders, and it's kind of like, puff their chest out and stand up tall, and you just see it in their eyes, yes, I think so and so and so and so. And then as soon as a particular individual came in the room, whether it be an entity leader or something else, man, they were totally quiet. They were not going to say anything and infringe upon that relationship, the perceived relationship. And if they were to say something, it would be something positive. And I just thought, it's hypocrisy is what it is, but I just love the way John put that cowardice really makes for that poor character.
And I think going back to that, what you're getting at here too, we got to be broader in this. It's not just black and white, always easy to see.
Oh no, yeah, no, that's true.
And what happens is this: you have people who question and they're not on board and they seem negative, but their no is not I'm against you. It's like I don't understand enough. And so things you need to do as a pastor in a church and as leadership is to empower leaders to make decisions because they understand the framework of Christianity. And that's all the fight. What's the biggest fight in churches? The real biggest fight between pastors and churches is 90% of pastors say, if we don't push evangelism, all the purposes of the church fail. Because for some reason, the evangelistic mindset makes us look to God and his kingdom in the future, and then it brings everything else into alignment practically. Now, worshiping God is the most important thing for us individually, but corporately, If we take our eyes off of the lost people, we start navel gazing. We become very self-centered. And that happens at, I don't know of any church that just, I'm going to worship God super deep and doesn't become evangelistic. And that kind of, they kind of feed off each other.
Yeah,
But
that's a great observation.
then another thing is, by being open, here are our resources. We can't do everything. So if you want to do Boy Scouts, you want to do Girl Scouts, you want to do Awana, you want to do GA girls, you want to do mission trip, and we have 200 people in our church, we don't have enough leaders to do all of them. We don't have enough finances to keep those mechanisms going. Because without money, there's no mission. You can do certain things without money. You can have a little Bible study in your home, but you can't really carry out a large scale endeavor to impact your community, your church, your home, your town, your kids, your youth, without some sort of funding mechanism, to buy literature, to pay for food, to pay for heat and clothes. You just can't do it. So there's a limitation on what you have, and you have to help people see the limitations, because they think that you're a cornucopia of money sometimes. I've watched that. I've looked at every major conflict that I've dealt with in our church has to do with resource allocation, and typically very clearly finances. Somebody was taking a lion's share of money or whatever, or finances they felt was their ministry, their stuff, and it wasn't working. And dollar to donuts, it was very, very poorly distributed way of doing life in church in the kingdom that needed to come to an end, and they didn't want to let it go. And rather, it's because we can't reach kids and keep on funding a food pantry no one's coming to. We had a library in my church at one time. We had like just barely 6-figure budget. We had a library, and the lady running was a librarian, and she wanted to have a Christian library as the internet's taken off. And she was spending $100 a month on books that nobody came and checked out. Maybe once in a while, but 1%, 2% of our money was being spent on books. By John on the phone. That's 1% of income.
Yeah,
and that's
sure.
For when it's 1% of over income, that's usually about 2 to 5% of your ministry income for something nobody's using, and so it's very, very frustrating.
Well, and going back to the conflict issue, it's the old saying that I use all the time from Donald Miller, when you confuse, you lose. When you confuse, you lose. And in churches, over and over and over, if what you're trying to get across isn't clear, then there can be misinterpretation, of what the actual motive is or what the reason is. And like you said, even a Christian framework, understanding that. That's a perfect segue into the last thing I want us to talk about today, before we wrap up within a half hour or so, because I know you've got another appointment. I don't know if you've read Sticky Church. This is an older book by Larry Osborne, but it's a good book. And I was revisiting it the other day, and there was one particular thing here that I wanted to bring out, and I wanted us to kind of unpack. Actually kind of two pieces. One of them is on making disciples, which we've talked about a good bit, in our conversations about doing that. And the other one is monitoring how to stay healthy. But let's take them one at a time. Osborne writes in here this little short paragraph about making disciples. He says, to measure the task of making disciples, we monitor 3 basic steps in the disciple making process. And this is what I like. 1, enlisting new followers into God's kingdom, conversions. 2, training them how to live the Christian life. And 3, equipping them and deploying them into service. He said, those are all 3 things that you can pretty easily keep track of. You can watch those pretty clearly and kind of see how well are you making disciples by monitoring just those 3 things. And it takes me back to my early years, like with Sunday school programs and having Sunday school emphasis. We'd have a month we'd set aside to promote Sunday school and enrollment and all that kind of thing. And I think back early on, they had like 5 key things that you would do in Sunday school, made you, a good Sunday school. Later on, I think it's Roy Edgman or somebody enlarged it to 8, and it goes all around at different times. But I think back, those are the key things that were made up, the importance of keeping track of those things. I'm transitional pastor of a church right now, a couple of hours from here where I am in Atlanta. And when I got there, one of the deacons told me, he said, I want us to baptize somebody. Now, this is before I'd seen all the statistics on the church. He said, I want us to baptize somebody. He said, I think we need to get up there and fill the baptistry up and make sure it hadn't sprung a leak. And I thought, okay, has it really been that long? And he said, I've been here 4 years plus, and I don't remember ever seeing us baptize anybody. And I got to thinking, wow. Well, shortly thereafter, I got the statistics, 50 years worth on the church, and realized the last 5 years, they hadn't baptized anybody. Not a single soul, not transfer, from another denomination as far as identifying with that church or new believers, nobody. And I thought, how can you say you're really making disciples when you're not reaching anybody new? And then the second one was the training them how to live for Christ. I mean, how do you put one foot in front of the other as a Christian? And then finally, the equipping them to deploy into service. How are you sending them out? What have you seen when you think about those things as far as making disciples?
Well, Bobby, I think we just put some rubber to the road on that. Let's call it what it is. It's great to have, alliteration. It's great to have verbal structure. I think that what he wrote was great. Most people wouldn't know how to do anything with that. So let's just make it real simple. Make it even simpler than that. Yes, we want to see people converted. First off, you have to have access to people who are not converted.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So you did the block party with me. We did a block party at our church Friday before Halloween. Over 1,000 people. You know what I did? The whole night. I drove a tractor with the hay bales in the back of it. And I drove probably 400 people. And I enlisted a guy not far from me. He had draft horses. He drove them on a different tractor, a horse-drawn thing. That was my job that night. But my people then had trunks, and we had trunks, all different things. They emphasized the Bible, but I always say you have to have candy. Remember, that's one thing we said. Kids come for the candy. So we don't give coins out. Don't be church and give those kids in the community that are lost are not coming for the gospel. They're coming for candy. So you better give them candy.
For a pencil.
You better give them a candy, right?
Yeah.
But in doing that, you're a church. Give them the gospel. Every kid got the pumpkin gospel. And every family got that. And we had different events. We had several different things to draw them in. Over 1,000 people came. Well, we have people register. They go from being a suspect. Yeah, you can say there's 20,000 people in my town. Great. There's not one prospect there. They're all suspects. You don't know them. You have to get information. They're prospects. Then you can, however you want to do that, you can go back and visit them door to door. That's very hard nowadays, but you can do that. Or you can keep on Facebook alerts and offer them opportunity. We're going to have candlelight service, come out Christmas Eve. We're going to have a kids program, come out here. We have adult men's Bible study. We have this. We're going to go feed the homeless. Come join us. And we had one family come that we invited. That was a prospect. We put it out there, and they came to feed homeless people with us. It was great, and they loved doing it. And they never met him before, and that drew them in. And then we know them. Then going back to you want to disciple them. That happens.
The training. Yeah. Talk about that.
That was the relationship. I mean, ultimately, I was talking to the navigator the other day, and one of my disappointments. I have studied Don Whitley. I've done Experiencing God. I've done Master Life. I've done People Sharing Jesus. I've done all faith discipleship. I've done all those things in the church, and I've struggled because I've seen people get kind of excited for a time, and I saw people go through Bible study and the program. And I've watched the people who were on fire kept on going, but they're on fire before I got a hold of them. And I watched the people who just came and they went back to the lowest common denominator afterwards. It comes down to, it can't just be a program. It's got to end up in a relationship that ends up being lifelong. A relationship with Jesus, that personal Bible study time, personal quiet time, where they're talking through the Holy Spirit to God, and they know what He's talking.
Yeah, training how to walk with Jesus.
But
how to
they
walk
need a friend.
life.
They need to be able to say, I have a life group that the people, they know me, I know them. And when I ask questions, how to apply, how do I take care of a baby? My baby's not sleeping through the night. They get discipled in practical life as well as spiritual life, which is all spiritual, Romans 12:1, right? Therefore, commit your life, your body, your mind, your soul, everything as a living sacrifice, not just one part, not just Sunday. So they need to have a friend. They need to have that room, emotional room, social room in your church family. And that goes back to being evangelistic. If you're always thinking, the only thing, we reach people, and I got my 12 people in my Bible study, and we're so tight, I can't imagine creating a new Bible study. Well, you're being selfish. You're
Yeah,
being selfish.
right.
And then ultimately, because you need to release people to do ministry through the word of God, through Christ, whether they're going to be a missionary going to feed homeless people, work with women in a shelter, teach kids Bible study, teach youth, teach adult Bible study, be part of the worship team, be part of a mission team, be part of a Christian Business Alliance. I mean, they need to be activated, not just simply be kept in a fishbowl. And what happens is,
Yeah, and that goes back to the equipping to deploy, doesn't it?
right, and that's all covered. But those are the main practical ways, and the fastest that Southern Baptists ever grew, the fastest, and we had more baptisms during this time than any other time in history, even today. It was during the Million More in 54 campaign.
Yep.
And the Million More was not a million more baptisms. It was simply the first connection. It was enroll 1 million people into Sunday school or life groups. Enroll 1 million people who are not going to church or not studying the Bible or not Christians into a small group fellowship where they're welcome, they're wanted, and they can work. That's what it came down. And when that happened, Southern Baptists went from being below Presbyterians and Methodists to being a small little podunk denomination that nobody noticed, to becoming a million member denomination. The property that we had for God to honor him quadrupled, I believe. The missions giving shot up like 1,000% within a decade, because of the impact of people thinking about inviting new people to be part of a small group fellowship where they're welcome, they're wanted and trained, and they were worked. They had
and in those days, the primary approach to that was through a Sunday school.
Yep.
And I tell somebody just this week, it doesn't matter really if you're talking about quote unquote small groups and home groups, or if you're talking about a Sunday school. The components for both are really the same. If you're going to grow effectively, you have to develop that Sunday school group and have the understanding of what it's there for. I talked to a guy just about 2 weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, well, did you enroll this person in your Sunday school? It was somebody who'd visited a couple of times, and he said, enroll? We don't enroll people. Why would we enroll anybody? Right. And I thought, oh, my soul. Because I grew up, as a young minister, enroll anybody, anytime, anywhere that they're willing, that was just kind of my mantra. And I mean, I've enrolled people on paper napkins and all kinds of stuff, but all that was a connecting point. It was a starting connecting point. So it may be from a block party, it may be at the county fair, it could be almost anywhere, but then they start reaching them in that group. And then within your small group, it's the same thing that a lot of practitioners are talking about with small groups in homes now. You have somebody who's going to be kind of in reach, I'll call it, but when people aren't there, well, let's reach out to them, let them know they were missed. What about new people? Let's make sure they feel welcome when new people come. Let's have somebody who's kind of keeping track of our stewardship. How many contacts are we making to engage people, that kind of thing. And all of those things are just very basics, Bobby, to growing. Yeah, go ahead.
When you were going to grammar school, high school, if you missed class or you missed school that day, or you did something the teacher didn't want you to know, didn't want you to do.
Yeah.
How many people told your parents? How many? 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah. At least one, and sometimes more than one. Yeah.
Because the community is so connected, and people had front porches, and they went out and they talked to each other, and people didn't travel as far for work.
Yeah, and you couldn't keep it hidden. Yeah.
Right. But also they were connected, and they cared about each other, cared about the kids doing well. Right. And there's a natural thing, like you knew your friends that you walk right in. Right. Today, what do people do? Their backyard's their front porch. They come in, garage door opens, closes. They go on the internet and they shop. They don't interact like we had a grocer. You had a deli. You knew the deli guy. You knew the pizza guy. You knew these people personally, and people had personal skills. The new generation has almost no skills, and we think they're going to magically, again, a romantic view of church. God's going to zap them, and they're going to demand to come to life groups. Even back in the day of Arthur Flake, he said, people do not read their Bible willingly. They don't do it typically. People never beat down the doors to go to life groups or Sunday school, and they never will. They have to be invited. If that was true back when our culture was much more connected physically, emotionally, relationally, and families knew each other that went to school and kids knew each other very, very well, and people would come together if a house burned down right away and they gave to people they knew, how much, and they need to be invited then, how much more now do we need to be the active invited? I know it's not comfortable. Most people are not extrovert like that. Most people don't like change. But if we take the gospel seriously, we train our people to take it seriously and challenge them, hopefully a few more people will invite, and hopefully that becomes part of the culture. But if you don't invite people and don't welcome them, they're not going to get saved.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We are the means that God uses. I don't care what your
Well,
soteriology.
it all starts with the relationship.
Yeah.
Starts with the relationship. Well, perfect transition again. I want to take you to the next thing that Osborne talks about staying healthy and monitoring 5 vital signs of church health. And I found this to be particularly interesting. He's talking about in this particular little section of the book, he's talking about kind of helping to monitor the vital signs within your small group of your church. But I found it's really applicable across the board. Yeah, not just with that. But listen to what he says. These are vital signs. They all basically are equal because they all are vitally important. So it's not like one has to be more important necessarily than the other, or is, but depending on what you're doing would be how they rate. But anyway, here are the 5 things he says are vital signs. All with W's. Now, I know you kidded about alliteration, but it's not mine. He did it. He did alliteration. Okay, here it is. Word, worship, witness, warmth, and works. If you're monitoring the word, you're preaching the word, you're teaching the word, you're making sure your people are in the word, doing everything you can to do that. I think that's great. Worship, very important, helping people understand what worship is, not ego-centered, not I-centered, but God-centered.
And also attending.
Those kind of things.
Attending. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Witness, learning how and participating in, being a part of sharing a witness with others. Goes back to what we were talking about with, the evangelistic piece. Warmth was the one that stuck out to me really a lot because I've seen this over the years working in consulting roles with lots of churches. But warmth, and then the 5th one is works. Let me back up to warmth just a minute. I see warmth to have 2 levels. There's basically 2 levels that you need to kind of monitor as that vital sign within the church. One is more of a surface level, and that is when you go in a congregation, you can sense that, you can kind of feel that there's a warmth among the people, in a class, or I mean, it's just it's that surface. But real warmth is determined by a much deeper experience of significant relationships, significant Christian relationships. So the ones who you have a relation with that you care for, they care for you. You share with, they share with you. It's a much more kind of intimate type of a relationship, and there's a warmth there that is unlike anything else. But you can determine that. How have you seen some of those vital signs? Let me ask this way: when one of those vital signs is not there, how do you see that impacting the church fellowship?
People are sheep, right? The Bible tells us that way. They want to feel safe. Now, unfortunately, when their safety is geared around their inner clique or the people they think are Christians, they may or may not be Christians. How many churches really have 90% of the membership being Christian? I doubt that. I doubt that very high. Right. And there's this romantic idea that everybody that I know will be healthy and be on fire for Jesus, unless and you believe they're doing stuff that they may not be doing until they do something that freaks your mind. And you go, wait, I didn't think they get divorced. I didn't think that child would get into drugs. And that person suddenly you realize had a mask on. That then shuts down that the other people that are good, that had no problems, they shut down automatically. And so that's one thing that shuts down the warmth in the church. Or they believe that it should be, what's the criticism of the Bible all the time is the leader did this, leader did that. Well, leaders lead. And unless it's unbiblical, ungodly, or immoral, or blatantly just, tyrannical or cruel, you get on with it. I mean, what do you want? Nothing. So sit around and throw rocks at each other. I mean, it's just weird that people think that. But warmth comes when people really do open up and they read their Bible and they become transparent, and they can say, my kid is strung with drugs, and they take honest evaluation. I wasn't paying attention. I can't tell how many people I know. Why did my kid turn out that way? I remember going to with a Cramps Crusade guy when I was being discipled in college, and we went to this guy's room, his dorm, right? And first thing he got confessed. He goes, "Oh man, I struggle with lust." I'm thinking, well, everybody does, but we're looking around, and afterwards, looked around his room, and every wall had like Cindy Crawford, and all these top models and stuff, and Harley Davidson women, and every wall had that. And we left, and the teacher said, "Jim, I'm discipling you. Why do you think he struggled with lust so much?" I said, "Well, he's surrounded by it." He goes, "Yes, Jim, you will struggle with lust. Men struggle with lust. Let's be honest about that. But we need to not feed the beast." And when you come across people who feed the beast rather than defeat the beast, and seek to hold each other to virtue rather than vice, and they're able to do it without judging, because everybody's going to fail. Everybody's going to fail at some level, but they're going to be hard when somebody is not seeking to remove vice in their life and raise up the virtue and value of Christ. That's what I see builds warmth, when people are able to, when people come together for real relationship. It takes one person who is there to simply manipulate or control or create a facade that's not real, that people don't call them out, like you said about in that meeting with other pastors. They talk this way in private, but in public, everything's fine. It's a rotten barrel. There's a rotten apple, and that barrel will start stinking, have mold in it, and so it'll take away warmth. And people can sense genuineness. They're not looking for perfection, looking for a direction and genuineness. Why did Billy Graham still have a ministry at 80, 85 years old to teenagers? Think about it. He preached to teenagers on youth night.
Right.
Do you know what people said? Well, he invited people to sing and give testimony that the youth could relate to, but the youth would go hush when he came up, because he was one of the most genuine people. He was genuine.
Right.
He had flaws, but he didn't go there with any pretense of, "Hey, I'm like you." He said, "I'm older than you are, but I admire you guys, and I love you guys, and I want you guys to have what I have. If I can be help to you, I want to be help to you." And they appreciate genuineness. We don't see it in politics today. We don't see it in some churches. Don't see it in many groups today. And I think that's what's tearing America apart. We're going to lie. We're going to tell people there's no male or female. And yet then you have the same group has women's rights. Well, if there's no male and female, what are women's rights? There's no women, right? We want to advance women and put down the patriarchy. But who won the Woman of the Year? A white dude. A white man won Woman of the Year. I mean, and how do you have the warmth there? It's all built upon, and people are buying into celebrity status. They think celebrity pastors. I'd rather be in a church with leaders who are local and aren't as articulate as a newscaster or a politician or as a movie star, but they preach the truth. They lived it out. You don't want total lack of ability, but I don't have to use the language that an Oxford scholar used. If they're preaching the gospel and they're communicating clearly, if they're serving people and loving people and people are serving with them, that's what it's about, building community. We've lost it. We've created, and Satan does that. He makes us focus on the posh, the lights, the fog, the hair blowing back, the big band, how well it sounds like it does on the radio compared to, and can you get the concert feel at church? And that's the majority of people worshiping in America today. And I can guarantee you, even though that those big boxes might be full of people right now, they're empty in many places, not all, but many times, of true spiritual fellowship with God and each other.
Right.
But the minute that the pastor flubs a sermon, the minute that the worship leader leaves, the church goes down.
Yeah.
It's all about the event, not about the warmth of each other. It's about the personal experience of how did I feel that day. And
that's kind of, I guess that's kind of why I started thinking about the particular vital sign of warmth. It really is two level. There is that surface level. But, well, it's just like this. the church where I'm transitional pastor, they've been through some really tough times, difficult
Right.
times. But one of the things that started happening, I've just been there about 2.5 months, but one of the things that's been really obvious is people get there early. People are very interactive. They're visiting with people. They're talking to people, and with guests, we've learned about, hey, it's important to greet guests early in the service, that kind of thing. And then at the end of the service, man, there are times I'm ready to lock my door and head out, and there's still people standing around because there's just that sense of community. They're communicating and talking with each other, and that's a sense of warmth that you pick up. And to be real honest, when a lost person or an outsider, comes in, the church was running in the mid-30s or so, when I was there about 2.5 months ago, and we had 49 Sunday. We had kind of a high attendance day about a month ago, had 59. We had 8 returning guests Sunday.
Right.
Well, people don't keep coming back to a place that they don't have some sense of hey, there's something good going on here, and so I think it's that the surface warmth is okay, but we really have to focus, and that goes back to the discipleship. We've got to focus on helping people develop those deeper relationships, and that's going to come from some of those other things. The training,
train
the
people,
worship.
but train people to have imagination. Imagination is so important. They have to build a vision.
Unpack that just a little bit.
Well, think about this. What does Jesus Christ say? The greatest commandment: love God with all your heart, right?
Right. Okay.
And love your neighbors yourself, right? But what else did he teach us? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not leave people alone, so leave you alone, right? And the question should be for the Christian who is an insider to Christ, insider to the church. If I were to come to a place that says God is love and sin is bad, and you're broken, you're wretched, and you need to be straightened out as to the fact you can't save yourself. You need a family to love, a God to follow, and a destiny to fulfill. If that's what I'm called to do, and they're called to do, they don't know how to do it. I need to think, what would it be like for me entering into this group of people that are on the inside and know everything? And do they face inward to each other, or do they face outward to me? And when I come in, do they seem to look to embrace me and pull me in? And do they come like the father to the prodigal son? Do they sit on their porch drinking coffee while look who the cat drug after? Who look finally came back, huh? Or do they run to that lost person who has no relationship and make them know you are wanted here, and let me help you assimilate to this group? Or we sit back and hope they figure it out. And far too often, people without imagination, they're not with ill intent. They don't consider how stressful it is to enter that fellowship. And if you don't catch them early on, the devil is there. He's, they don't want you. You're not good enough. They're going to judge you. You can't make it. You don't have time. You're sleepy. It's going to interfere with your day. You can't shop. You can't do your laundry. There's a billion reasons why the devil will give them for not being there, even though you don't need a billion reasons to be there. You need the one. Yeah. God exists. He's real. He loves you. Jesus Christ rose from the grave. Follow him. And if that is the most profound thing in the world, that Jesus Christ died on the cross and rose again. And if we don't capture that he fought sleepiness off that Sunday morning and got up out of the grave, and we can't get out of bed, we can't be excited that people came, that he is drawing people to church, he is drawing people to you. If you can't get excited about that, I don't know what Jesus you met. And we got to think that way. We got to imagine that way instead of being comfortable. What's it say? Was it a Joel or Haggai? At ease in Zion? Woe to those who are at ease in Zion. We're at ease in Zion, and the church is dying as a whole.
Yeah, no. I always say we can't just sit, soak, and sour.
Yes, exactly. That's a good thing.
Can't sit, soak, and sour. Yeah, because that's what we do. We get very comfortable, and then we start souring.
Can't pack your bag and go to pity scene, have a pity party.
Yeah, have a pity party. Well, Jim, let's wrap it up for today. Enjoyed visiting about all these topics and the ideas. Hopefully we'll get together, and some of our other guys will be able to join us. We'll have more than just the two of us next time around, but enjoy the conversation. And this has been good. Always learn a lot when we get together and visit and dialogue, even when we might disagree, or when I play the devil's advocate sometimes along the way to push you a little bit. But
I could be wrong.
It's been good. Yep. It's been good. And I think you've got another appointment, so go enjoy that. So
I will.
Be good. All right. Take care, man.